I married into the Thorn dynasty, a world of old money, whispered power, and diamond-edged smiles. My wife, Isabella Thorn, once ruled that world like a storm wrapped in silk, brilliant, elegant, untouchable. Before the accident, she was the kind of woman who could silence a room with a glance. Now she's still breathtaking, just broken in ways no one dares mention. These days she keeps me close, too close. Sometimes literally. "Ethan," she says from her wheelchair, her voice sweet and soft, the kind of soft that hides a blade. "If I hear you telling another one of your dirty jokes to the housekeeper, I'll make sure you never leave my side again." I rub the red mark on my wrist where her handcuffs have left their trace. "Honey," I say, forcing a smile, "isn't this technically kidnapping?" She tilts her head, feigning innocence, lips curling like she's enjoying every second of this game. "Then call the police," she whispers. "Let's see if they'll intervene in a little game between husband and wife." The next morning, the cold bite of metal wakes me before the sun does. My hands chained to the carved mahogany headboard. Rose gold this time, because of course it is. The room is still, drenched in the gray hush of dawn. Then her voice drifts from the side of the bed, soft, familiar, a ghost of who she used to be. "You're awake." She's there, in her silk nightgown, hair tumbling over her shoulders, the faintest smile on her lips. If not for the wheelchair, or the distant look that sometimes clouds her eyes, she'd still be the goddess New York once adored. I rattle the cuffs lightly. "New model? Sleeker than last week's silver pair. Custom," she says with pride. "Do you like them? I thought the rose gold would suit your skin tone." I give her a tired smile. "Can you unlock them? I've got a board meeting." Her warmth vanishes in a blink. "Will that new assistant be there? The one who smiled at you yesterday?" And there it is, the shift, the spark of jealousy that turns her voice into something sharp and dangerous. I laugh, hollow and small. "She's Davenport's assistant, Izzy. I was just being polite." "The way she looked at you wasn't polite," Isabella murmurs, tracing slow circles on my palm. It's crazy, but part of me still aches for the woman she was, the one who saw something in me, a broke scholarship kid drowning in debt, and decided I was real. Now I'm the joke of every cocktail party, the trophy husband trapped in a gilded cage. At 9:30, she finally frees my wrist, only to snap an electronic anklet around my leg. "The perimeter's set to the property line," she says sweetly. "Step beyond it and your car won't even start." I laugh softly. "You're getting high-tech, honey." She smiles, eyes glinting. "Well, my husband is the CEO of a tech company. I have to keep up." Later at work, my VP greets me with a knowing grin. "Still getting that tough love from the missus?" He jokes. I lift my pant leg, showing the anklet. "New model," I tell him. He laughs, but I don't. Because beneath all the jokes, the truth is simpler and heavier than anyone knows. They all think I'm the lucky one, the man who married into power, into beauty, into a name. But they don't know about the crash, or the nights I slept beside her hospital bed. They don't see the woman who watches me through a camera when I'm at work, who tracks my every step, and the man who stays anyway. And maybe the scariest part isn't that she's lost control. It's that I might have lost mine too. It was supposed to be just another ordinary night. I told myself that as I adjusted the band on my ankle, the latest model, sleek and discreet. "It's the new wellness tracker," I joked at the office. Reminds me to move when I sit too long. No one needed to know it was tracking something else entirely. By the time I got home, the city outside was glowing, a million lights glittering against the dark. Inside, our townhouse was warm, quiet, and there she was. Isabella sitting in her wheelchair before a table dressed for two. Candles, silver cutlery, wine already poured. "Happy birthday," she said softly. Her cheeks carried the faintest blush. My stomach dropped. I'd forgotten. My own birthday, and the one person who watched me like a hawk was the only one who remembered. She wheeled closer, holding up a tiny, ornate key. "I got you something," she whispered, unlocking the band from my ankle. From a drawer, she pulled out a thick envelope and handed it to me. "What's this?" Inside was a stock transfer, 15% of her personal shares in Thorn Industries. "This is too much," I said. "I can't accept it." "You're my husband," she replied, her gaze unwavering. "Think of it as compensation for the restraints," Her lips curved. With this, it'll be harder for you to leave me. I looked at her then, really looked, and realized this wasn't a gift. It was another kind of cage, one made of gold. Isabella, I said quietly, you know I'd never leave you. She smiled, that small, dangerous smile of hers. Consider it an insurance policy. Later, we had dinner under a sky scattered with rare New York stars. I pushed her chair out onto the terrace, and for a moment the city noise faded into a hush. She tilted her head back, staring at the sky. Ethan, she murmured, do you ever regret it? Regret what? Meeting me. Getting tangled in all of this. I knelt in front of her, meeting her eyes. You want to know why I said yes to you? Because my whole life I was the one people left behind. My parents, my friends, everyone. But you made me feel like I finally belonged somewhere. Her hand lifted, brushing the red mark still faint on my wrist. Even like this? She whispered. Even like this, I said. Because when you're possessive, it just means you care. That night there were no handcuffs. Just her soft breathing against my chest as she slept. Her fingers clutching the fabric of my shirt like she was afraid I might vanish. Bad dream? I whispered. She nodded, eyes still half closed. I dreamt you left me. I held her tighter. Never. I'm here. Always. When morning came, the metal was back. Cold, familiar. I woke to find her already dressed, hair brushed, smile perfectly in place. Good morning, darling, she said. We're having dinner with my parents tonight. Be good. I rattled the chain with a grin. She tilted her head, pretending to think, then produced the key. That depends on how you behave. As she unlocked me, I caught her sly little smile and thought, maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the worst kind of love. In a city as cold as New York, having someone need you this desperately felt almost like a blessing. Later, when I teased her, you're beautiful when you're being possessive, she blushed and pushed me away gently. Her touch wasn't iron that time, but silk, a purple scarf looped around my wrist, its other end in her hand. Good morning, she murmured. Do you remember what day it is? I hesitated. Not her birthday, not our anniversary. 3 years ago today, she said softly. You told me you loved me for the first time. I'd forgotten. Not because I didn't love her, but because loving her had become a weight I carried everywhere. The kind that presses slowly until it's hard to breathe. You forgot, she said, her voice cooling. Just like you forgot our agreement last night, when you went out with Mark. My stomach tightened. It was a client meeting, Izzy. You can check my phone's location. She smiled, small, knowing, terrifying. I know. I had Mrs. Gable follow you. The words hit harder than I expected. Mrs. Gable, the woman who brought us breakfast, who smiled kindly every morning, was one of her spies. Isabella, it's because I love you, she said sweetly, adjusting my collar like nothing was wrong. Her eyes softened just a little. Do you know why I chose you, Ethan? It wasn't your talent, or your charm. She leaned closer. It was because I saw the same loneliness in your eyes that I've always had in mine. I didn't know what to say. For the first time, Isabella had said something that stripped away every layer of control between us. Her voice from earlier still echoed in my head as we sat at breakfast, pretending everything was normal. The anklet around my leg felt tighter than usual, like even it could sense the tension in the air. She served me oatmeal herself, calm and elegant, as if our morning confrontation had never happened. I have a checkup today, she said lightly, spooning sugar into her bowl. You're coming with me. It wasn't a request. I just nodded. I knew better than to argue. The rehab center sat on the Upper West Side, marble floors, fresh orchids, the kind of place that smelled like money trying to imitate hope. Isabella came here once a month, but she never let me join her therapy sessions. Today was no different. I was scrolling through my phone in the waiting area when I heard a voice I hadn't heard in years. Ethan, is that really you? Sarah, a friend from my Columbia days, bright, kind, real. We talked for a few minutes, just catching up, and for a second it felt normal. Then my phone rang. Her ringtone, the one Isabella had picked for herself. Tell that woman to leave, came her voice, flat, emotionless. I looked up, and there she was. her silhouette behind the one-way glass of the observation window upstairs, watching. Sarah must have seen something shift in my expression because she smiled awkwardly and excused herself. My phone buzzed again. "Come get me," Isabella said. The drive home was silent, the kind of silence that sits heavy, like fog. Isabella stared out the window the whole way. Then, without looking at me, she said quietly, "That woman's in love with you, Sarah." I laughed softly. "We're just classmates. I haven't seen her in years." She turned her wheelchair toward me, eyes trembling with something fragile, almost childlike. "Ethan," she whispered, "if I can never walk again, will you leave me?" I dropped to my knees, took her hands. "No," I said. "Never." And it was the truth. For all her control, all her obsession, I loved her. I loved the fierce woman she'd been, and I loved this broken version, too. That night, she was different, quiet. No questions about my phone. No cuffs, no commands, just quiet. Before bed, she turned to me and said, "The doctor told me there's almost no hope I'll ever walk again." I moved behind her, wrapping my arms around her shoulders. "It doesn't matter," I whispered. "I'll be your legs." She turned slowly, eyes shining in the dark.
Really?
"Really?" There was a long silence. Then she said it, so softly I almost didn't hear. "I'm pregnant." Time froze. The air left my lungs. I just stood there, unable to move, unable to think. 2 months, she said, taking my hand and placing it over her stomach. "The doctor says, because of my condition, this baby could kill me." "Then don't." The words slipped out before I could stop them. Her expression went cold, sharp as glass. "You don't want my child?" "No, Isabella, I'm worried about you." She studied me for a long moment, her face unreadable. Then she softened. "He said if I go through with it, I'll need to be on bed rest for 7 months. "Then I'll be there," I said. "Every step." And I meant it. Because somewhere between her love and her madness, I'd stopped being her husband and become her anchor. That night, I found her in the study, crying over a stack of old files, projects she'd led before the accident. "I can't go back," she whispered. "I'll never be her again. The woman who could command a boardroom." I held her. "You're still you," I said. That woman never left. Something shifted between us then. The walls she'd built started to crack, and for the first time I saw her. Not the Thorn heiress, not my captor, just Isabella. The next morning I handed her my phone before she even asked. "Here," I said. "Check it. I don't want you worrying anymore." She looked surprised. Then she smiled. "I don't need to." "Why not?" She took my hand and placed it gently on her belly. "Because now," she whispered, "you're mine forever." The anklet on my leg felt lighter that morning, but the invisible chains around my heart had never felt heavier. When I woke again, she was lying on my chest, tracing the buttons on my shirt with her fingers. "The baby thinks you should replace your secretary," she murmured. Her voice was sleepy, but her eyes were sharp, calculating. A chill ran through me. I hadn't even told her I'd been thinking the same thing. "She handed in her resignation this morning," Isabella said, smiling faintly. "I told finance to give her 3 months severance." "Why?" I asked carefully. "Because she likes you," she said, tapping my chest. "She reapplies her lipstick every time she brings you a document. I don't like it when other people want what's mine." I took a breath, steady, slow. Melissa had been with the company for years. Clumsy, yes, but harmless. This was paranoia again, or something darker. At breakfast, Mrs. Gable brought me a smoothie that tasted faintly of earth. "It's a wellness blend," Isabella said cheerfully. "Good for the baby." I looked at her, at the faint swell of her stomach, and drank it all. Because how could I not? Since she'd become pregnant, her obsession had taken on a new form. Everything was now for the baby. Every rule, every restraint, every look. On the drive to work, my phone buzzed with a text from Mark. "Melissa just quit. Heard your wife's running HR now." I smiled bitterly. Didn't even reply. In the rearview mirror, I caught a glimpse of Mrs. Gable's car trailing behind mine. Isabella's surveillance hadn't eased. It had doubled. And halfway through the morning board meeting, my anklet suddenly started to vibrate, then blared a loud, piercing alarm. The whole room turned toward me. And that's when I realized whatever freedom I thought I had left was gone. Isabella had tightened the anklet again. I had to mumble something about a faulty health tracker, pretending like it was nothing, even though I could feel Sterling's eyes lingering a little too long on my ankle during the meeting. "That's a unique tracker, Mr. Carter," he said, half joking. I just smiled, but inside, I was burning. After the meeting, I ducked into the hallway and tried to adjust the damn thing, but the controls were locked. I called Isabella, forcing my voice to sound soft, careful. "Honey, the perimeter's too small. It went off in the middle of the meeting." There was a pause, that familiar pause that always meant she was deciding whether to trust me. Then her calm, honey-sweet voice came through. "I'm just worried about you and the baby. There's a flu going around at work. The smaller radius is for your protection." I knew there was no point arguing, so I said nothing. Later that day, she insisted I come with her to the rehab center for her prenatal checkup. While waiting, in the lobby, I saw Sarah again, a familiar face from another life, one that felt like a dream now. She walked straight up to me, concern clouding her eyes. "Ethan, we need to talk about Isabella." Instinctively, I glanced up, and there she was, the faint silhouette of Isabella's wheelchair behind the tinted observation glass. Watching. Always watching. Sarah lowered her voice. "Her behavior here has been strange. She refuses therapy, and she keeps asking the staff about how pregnancy can be used to control a partner." My heart dropped, but I forced a smile, the same polite one I'd worn for months. "Thank you, Sarah. She's just dealing with hormones." Sarah sighed and handed me a business card. "If you ever need someone to talk to, this therapist is good." I slipped the card into my pocket, already knowing what would happen next. And sure enough, the phone rang. "Throw away what's in your pocket," Isabella's voice came through, cold and sharp. With her gaze burning into me from above, I walked to the trash can and dropped the card inside. The ride home was silent, that heavy, airless kind of silence that felt like drowning. Once we were inside, she turned on me, voice trembling. "Why didn't you listen to her? Go on. Call the therapist." "I don't need a therapist," I said, trying to reach for her hand. "Yes, you do," she snapped, her voice cracking. "You need someone to tell you how to deal with a crazy person like me, don't you?" Her face was flushed, her hands shaking. My chest ached just looking at her. This wasn't the Isabella I knew, or maybe it was, the most real version of her. The pregnancy had stripped away the armor, and what was left was fear. Raw, desperate fear. "Listen to me," I said, kneeling beside her. "I have never, not once, thought you were crazy. I love you, all of you." Her eyes shimmered with tears. "But I'm scared, Ethan. I'm scared of having the baby, scared of getting uglier, scared you'll leave." It was the first time she'd ever said it out loud. The first time she'd stopped hiding behind control. That night, she didn't lock me down. She didn't reach for the restraints. She just asked me to hold her. In the dark, I woke to her sobbing softly. "I had a nightmare," she whispered. "You took the baby and left me." I brushed her tears away. "That will never happen," I promised. "Then prove it," she said, pulling out a document. "Sign this. If you ever leave me, you forfeit all rights to our child and everything I own." Under the pale light of the moon, I looked at her, the tremble in her voice, the desperation in her eyes, and I signed. She smiled faintly, tucked the paper away, and fastened a delicate silver chain around my wrist. "It's a safety tether for the baby," she whispered, "so Daddy can't get lost." The next morning, she was in the kitchen, humming softly as she flipped pancakes, like the woman she used to be. "Feeling good today?" I asked. She smiled. "The baby said Daddy was a good boy yesterday. He deserves a reward." At breakfast, she even unclasped the silver chain. For a moment, I thought maybe things were getting better, but when I reached for my phone, she gently placed her hand on mine. "Forget about work. I've already called you in sick. You're coming with me to the ultrasound." At the clinic, she held my hand so tightly it hurt. When the image of our baby appeared on the screen, tiny, moving, alive, her tears flowed freely. "He's healthy," the doctor said. "A little shy. Keeps hiding his face." On the drive home, Isabella whispered to her belly, her words soft, almost like a prayer. Then she looked at me. "Ethan, if he's like me, broken, will you still love him?" I squeezed her hand. "Of course I will. And you're not broken." She rested her head on my shoulder. "Then promise me. Promise you'll always be a good father and a good husband." I promised, knowing full well what that promise cost. As the due date crept closer, her love only grew more consuming. But somewhere in that suffocating tenderness, I realized something terrifying. I was starting to get used to it. Maybe I was just as sick as she was. That night, Isabella wrote in her journal, "The baby kicked 3 times today, each time when Ethan spoke. He must love his daddy's voice. I told the baby Daddy will always be with us, telling us stories." On a separate page, I started keeping my own journal. "I saw our baby's hands today," I wrote, "and I realized I now have 2 people to protect, even if it means being locked by Isabella's side forever." Maybe that's its own kind of happiness. The anklet was replaced with a looser one, but it didn't matter. My world had already shrunk to the walls of our townhouse, a gilded cage wrapped in luxury and fear. Isabella's belly had grown round and full, like she was hiding a small world beneath her dress. She sat in her wheelchair, eyes fixed on her laptop, monitoring a live feed from my company's board meeting. "Mr. Sterling looked at you 17 times during his presentation," she said casually, not even glancing up. "He thinks you're a puppet who married into power, and he's waiting for his chance to take over." Her words froze me mid-motion. Sterling was a problem, yes, but the fact that Isabella, confined to our home, knew this much about the boardroom sent a chill straight through me. "The baby says Daddy should wear the blue shirt today," she added, smiling faintly. "The new one. It matches my dress." I didn't argue. I just changed. By the 5th month, Isabella's control had evolved into something almost elegant. She didn't need locks or cuffs anymore. I'd been trained, conditioned, to move through life by her rhythm, her rules. At breakfast, she spooned oatmeal into my bowl, her tone soft but precise. "You had an extra half cup of coffee yesterday," she said. "Caffeine can affect the baby's mood." I froze, sugar packet in hand. "How did you know that?" "The baby told me," she said, perfectly calm. "He said Daddy's heart was beating too fast." I smiled faintly, but my mind raced. Somewhere, in my clothes, in my watch, maybe even the anklet, she'd hidden a heart monitor. That's how she always knew when I was anxious. Later, I searched every seam and pocket, but found nothing. On my way to work, I noticed something else. The car following me wasn't Mrs. Gable's anymore. A young man, fit and unfamiliar, was behind the wheel. At the office, new cameras had been installed, small, sleek, covering every blind spot. Mark came in with a report, his eyes flicking toward the lenses on the wall. I gave him a tired, knowing smile. He didn't ask. That afternoon, Isabella called. Her ringtone, that delicate chime, always made my stomach drop. "Darling," she cooed, "the woman on your left has looked at you 3 times. More than 5 seconds each time." My blood ran cold. When I got back to my office, a new picture frame sat on my desk. Our wedding photo. On the back, she'd written in tiny, perfect script, "Forever and always." That's when it hit me. Isabella's need for control wasn't just insecurity. It was inheritance. Her father ruled people with money. She ruled me with love. And I was a willing captive. When I came home that evening, she was waiting with a soft smile, already knowing I'd stopped to buy her favorite cake. "The baby's been kicking all day," she said, placing my hand on her belly. "Every time I know you're thinking of us." I felt the flutter beneath my palm and realized something cruel. In this twisted dance of love and fear, there were no villains. Just two people poisoning and healing each other in equal measure. Late that night, I found her in the study, reading her mother's old diaries. When she noticed me, she snapped the book shut, but not before I saw the title scrawled across the page, "How to Keep Your Husband." It was a family legacy. The next day, the doctor insisted Isabella be hospitalized. Her blood pressure was dangerously high. That night, she held my hand tight in her hospital bed. "If I die," she whispered, "will you remarry?" "Don't be ridiculous," I said softly. "Promise me you won't let another woman touch our child." Her eyes were wild, desperate. I promised. Only then did she finally sleep. But sometime in the night, I felt a tug. Isabella was half awake, trying to tape our hands together with medical tape. "So you can't sneak away," she mumbled, drifting back into sleep. I didn't pull away. I just held her tighter. By morning, she'd replaced the tape with a soft cotton band, pale blue. "Good for the baby's visual development," she said. It was tied to the headboard, long enough for me to move around the room, but not to leave. "Good morning, Daddy." Isabella smiled from her wheelchair, hands resting over her swollen belly. "The baby wants you to read them poetry today." I tugged the band lightly. "Can Daddy have a little freedom first?" She pretended to think, then untied it just enough for me to move around the house. "Only inside. Mrs. Gable and the new nurse, Leah, will keep you company." By her 7th month, Isabella's body had slowed down, but her control had only sharpened. And strangely, I'd started to need it. The boundaries she set gave me something like peace, a structure to live inside. That morning, a thick book sat on the breakfast table. "A Guide to Perinatal Mental Health." I caught her watching me. "Leah recommended it," she said softly. I want to understand what's happening to me." It was the first time she'd admitted something might be wrong. And for a moment, I saw hope. Fragile, flickering, but real. On the drive to work, the surveillance car behind me had changed, now a sleek black sedan. Mark was waiting in my office, looking grim. "Sterling's been buying up shares," he said, handing me a file. "And he's been meeting with your father-in-law." My stomach dropped. Mr. Thorn had never liked me, but I never thought he'd turn on his own daughter. That evening, I came home early, a rare impulse. But I stopped outside the nursery when I heard voices. Leah's calm tone drifted through the door. "The risk of postpartum depression is high, Isabella. You need to be prepared." "It won't happen," Isabella's voice cut through, firm and cold. "I've already made arrangements. Ethan will be with me and the babies full time. The company doesn't matter anymore. Nothing doesn't except my family." And in that moment, I realized the truth. I wasn't just part of her world anymore. I was her world, and there was no escaping it. I stepped back quietly, realizing what she was doing, preparing for her own illness. It wasn't fear this time, it was awareness, a level of calm self-acceptance I'd never seen in her before. That afternoon, during her checkup, the doctor's words hit like a thunderclap. "The twins are developing faster than expected. We'll need to schedule the C-section for 37 weeks. Twins. The word barely made it past my lips as I looked from the doctor to Isabella. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "I wanted it to be a surprise," she whispered. The car ride home was silent, thick with things unsaid. Only when we reached the bedroom did she take my hand, her eyes glistening. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I was afraid you'd feel overwhelmed." And in that moment I understood. This wasn't about control anymore. It was fear. Fear that I couldn't handle the weight of 2 lives. Fear that 2 children might mean one less piece of me left for her. Fear that I'd finally leave. That night the fever came. Preeclampsia. They rushed her to the hospital. Watching her, swollen and pale, surrounded by wires and machines, my chest ached. "If I die," she whispered weakly, "will you take care of him?" "Don't talk like that," I said. "You're going to be fine." Her grip tightened. "You have to swear you won't let anyone take my place, especially not Sarah." Even now, at the edge of consciousness, her jealousy burned like a fever of its own. The next week blurred into chaos. Hospital visits by day, corporate war by night. Sterling had launched a coup to take my position as CEO. "You need to get back here," Mark pleaded. "He's taking the company." But when I looked at Isabella sleeping restlessly, I couldn't move. Not until she stirred and whispered, "Go. I can feel your anxiety. Leah and Mrs. Gable are here. I've already arranged for backup." When I arrived at the boardroom, the air was electric. And sitting there, calm as ever, was Mr. Thorn, Isabella's father. "My daughter's company," he said coldly, eyes fixed on Sterling, "is not for outsiders to meddle with." And just like that, the coup crumbled. When it was over, he placed a firm hand on my shoulder. "Isabella was right about you." On the drive back, it hit me. She had planned all of this. Even from her hospital bed, she'd been pulling strings, protecting me, protecting us. After her discharge, she changed. The surveillance stopped. The trackers, the locked doors are gone. She poured herself into the twin bassinets instead. But the calm felt eerie, like the stillness before a storm. One night I woke to the sound of her voice through the nursery door. She was whispering softly to the empty cribs. "You have to be good boys. Don't make Daddy's life too hard. And if Daddy ever tries to leave, Mommy will take you all to a better place." A cold dread crawled up my spine. Her illness wasn't gone. It had simply evolved. 2 weeks before the due date, she handed me a flash drive. "A gift," she said. Inside was every recording she'd ever made of me. Every call, every meeting, even footage from our bedroom. Alongside it was a legal document canceling all the restrictive contracts she'd forced me into. "Why?" I asked. "If I die, you deserve to be free," she said softly. "And if I live, I trust you not to leave." It was the first time she'd ever given me a choice. The day before her surgery, she asked for a walk along the Brooklyn Bridge Park. The river shimmered beneath the lights. "You know," she said, pointing toward Manhattan, "the first time I saw you wasn't at that gala. It was here. You were standing alone, looking so lost. I recognized that loneliness. It matched mine." I froze. I remembered that night. I'd just been evicted, broke, invisible. She smiled faintly. "I had you investigated. The gala wasn't fate, Ethan. It was an ambush. So she'd chosen me long before I even knew her name. The twins came into the world healthy and loud. 2 perfect little boys. Isabella hemorrhaged, but she survived. Watching her cradle them, pale and trembling but alive, I felt something indescribable. A fragile, haunting kind of happiness. As we left the hospital, she stopped me by the car. "One final test," she said, her eyes searching mine. "You're free now. Are you going to leave?" I looked at her and, to my own surprise, said, "No." "Why?" She whispered. "Because, like you, I need to be needed." She smiled through her tears, pulled out a velvet box, and opened it. Inside were 2 simple gold bands. "To lock us together," she murmured, "for life." And as she slid the ring onto my finger, I knew our love wasn't healing. It was a kind of beautiful madness neither of us could escape. Back home, she wrote in her journal, "Ethan passed the final test today. Tomorrow the new rules of the game begin." And on a separate page, in my handwriting, "It feels good to be needed, even if the price is a gilded cage." Maybe I'm the one who's truly sick. The twins' cries broke the silence. I tried to stand, but my wrist caught. A silk cord tied me gently to the headboard, long enough to reach the bassinets, but not to leave the room. "The babies need their daddy." Isabella's voice floated from the shadows, calm and warm. "But Daddy is mine." She sat in her wheelchair, nursing both infants, serene and terrifyingly beautiful. By breakfast, she'd made it a routine. Spousal sympathy diet, she called it. "You've lost 2 pounds. From now on, you eat what I eat." Even my body wasn't my own anymore. In the car, the GPS chirped in her recorded voice. "To prevent detours to see people you shouldn't." And all I could do was smile faintly, because somehow I'd stopped wanting to run. The cameras in my office had been upgraded, now with thermal imaging. Every move, every breath, every flicker of warmth was monitored. When Mark slipped me a note about Sterling meeting foreign investors, a metallic voice from the ceiling interrupted, calm and cold. "Abnormal body temperature detected. Please check for sources of infection." I mumbled something about the air conditioning. It was a terrible lie. An hour later, Leah arrived in a full hazmat suit, scrubbing down my desk under Mrs. Carter's orders. Our home had become a fortress, the kind that looked beautiful on the outside but felt suffocating inside. The nursery was now a sealed clean room, every inch sterilized. When I once tried to take the twins outside, the alarm wailed through the halls. "The babies cannot leave the main house," Isabella's voice echoed from an upstairs window. Too many pollutants. Later, as I soothed both crying boys, I saw something shift in her expression, a flicker of pain, of envy. That night it all broke loose. "You're such a natural father," she sobbed. "But I'll never stand and hold them. I'll never chase them across a lawn." It was the first time she'd truly grieved her body, her limits. I held her as she trembled, realizing her control wasn't just obsession, it was mourning disguised as love. A few days later, I found her in the study burning documents. "What are those?" I asked. She didn't even look up. Proof that Sterling's been colluding with foreign investors. My stomach dropped. "How did you get that?" She smiled faintly. "I never told you. The car crash wasn't an accident." The world tilted. "Sterling arranged it," she said calmly. "He wanted me dead. He just wasn't very good at it." "Why didn't you tell me?" "It was a test," she said, "to see if he'd try to take over the company while I was gone. You passed." The next day, she called a board meeting via video link. From her hospital bed, she dismantled Sterling's career with the same precision she once used to dismantle me, smiling, serene, unstoppable. That evening, her father called me. His voice cracked. "She's more ruthless than her mother ever was. Take care of her, Ethan." And that's when I learned. Her mother had suffered from the same darkness, a legacy Isabella had inherited like a curse. As the boys grew, so did her control. She fitted them with tiny biomonitoring anklets. "Mommy loves you," she'd whisper, kissing their foreheads. "So Mommy has to keep you safe." I saw in them her reflection, fragile, fierce, and frighteningly brilliant. And somehow I didn't feel afraid anymore. On the twins' first birthday, she presented me with a family constitution. 3 hugs a day, no boarding school before 10, 1 date night per week. Her eyes sparkled with hope. "Will you sign?" she asked. And of course I did, because for us this was normal. Then, slowly, painfully, she rose to her feet, using high-tech leg braces that whirred softly as she moved. "Surprise," she whispered, wrapping her arms around me. I wanted to hug you properly. In that trembling embrace, all her madness made sense. It was love, warped, suffocating, but still love. And in that sickness, we'd somehow found balance. That night, her journal read, "Ethan signed the new Constitution. Tomorrow, I begin designing the boys' curriculum." Mine simply said, "It feels good to be needed, even if the price is a gilded cage." The playpen mat was now a deep violet. "Better for stimulating color perception," she'd declared. When I leaned over to pick up a crying baby, a soft elastic tether clipped to my belt stopped me short. "Daddy has exceeded his daily cuddle quota by 1, Isabella announced, gliding in on her new silent electric wheelchair. A tablet on her armrest flashed with parent-child interaction analytics. The twins were 1 year old, and Isabella's reign had entered its data-driven era. Every hug, every spoonful, every lullaby was logged, timed, analyzed. She called it scientific parenting. I called it the systematization of her obsession. "Izzy, I think they have a fever," I said one morning. She smiled gently. "Teething. Their skin patches are sending live data to my tablet. Look." 2 perfect graphs. Her proof that motherhood could be measured. Breakfast came as 2 identical bowls of mashed carrots. "Sympathy diet," she said, spooning one into my mouth. "You must experience everything they do." Even my taste buds belong to her now. On car rides, the stereo played a loop of the twins' recorded cries. A text pinged on my phone. A reminder of who's waiting for you at home. At their checkup, the doctor praised their development. Isabella smiled proudly, then turned to me. "Who do you think they look like more?" "Your eyes," I said carefully. She nodded. "My nose." Then typed into her tablet. "Paternal gene expression confirmed. Familial bond reinforced." On the drive home, she dropped another bomb. "I know you met with Sarah last week." My heart stuttered. It was a business lunch. I know, she said, smiling. I approved it. It was a beta test for my new surveillance suite. She held up her phone. Audio recording, heart rate graphs, everything. Sarah's heart rate spiked 3 times, she said proudly. She still wants you. But you performed perfectly. I felt sick. My life wasn't a marriage anymore. It was an experiment. At the twins' birthday party, she surprised everyone by letting me cut the cake alone with the boys. I almost believed it was freedom, until I noticed the tiny microphones clipped to their collars. For our guests, she whispered in my earpiece, so they can hear what the babies are really thinking. Luckily, the twins babbled Mama and Dada evenly. Crisis averted. But the next day, she added a new rule to the family constitution, the emotional expression parity clause. That night, I saw the glow of her tablet through the study door. Her journal was open. Ethan passed the loyalty test today. New concern. Will the children dilute his affection for me? A new optimization protocol may be required. I backed away quietly, because deep down I knew this game would never end. But the truth that terrified me most was that I didn't want it to. I had become addicted to her love, to the cage she built around us. And the next morning, when she asked me to wheel her out to the garden, the sunlight spilling across her face, I realized something I'd never dared to admit. This, all of it, had become home. Using her newly upgraded braces, Isabella reached for my hand, her grip trembling but determined. I have a surprise for you, she said, her voice soft with excitement. Step by careful step, she led me down the garden path, the faint mechanical whir of her braces mixing with the whisper of the wind. The sun was setting behind the trees, painting everything in a gold haze. At the edge of the property stood a new structure, glass-walled, gleaming, and unfamiliar. She tapped a code on the digital lock, and the door slid open with a quiet hiss. Inside, the air was cool and sterile, humming faintly with the sound of servers. It was a control room, a command center, a perfect, terrifying shrine. A dozen monitors lined the walls, each one showing a different angle of our lives, the nursery, the kitchen, the living room, even my office. Every heartbeat, every sigh, every second of our existence flickered across the screens in real time. But at the center of it all was one massive display, a single waveform, pulsing steadily. My heartbeat. I call it the Museum of Our Love, she said, her voice trembling with pride. It's a record of everything we've shared, every word, every touch, every moment that proves we belong to each other. She stood there, her eyes reflecting the glow of the monitors like tiny constellations. This, she whispered, is forever. For a long time, I couldn't speak. I just stared at that rhythmic peak and valley of my own heart, displayed like art, a private signal of life, devotion, and surrender. And strangely, instead of fear, what I felt was peace. There was no more pretending. No illusion of freedom left to chase. In this cage she had built, polished, brilliant, unbreakable, I had found something steady, predictable, safe. Do you like it? She asked finally, searching my face with the fragile hope of a child showing her first masterpiece. I nodded slowly. It's beautiful. And then, without hesitation, I pulled her into a kiss. Her lips were trembling, but she smiled against my mouth, and for a fleeting second it felt real. Love, madness, devotion, all tangled into one impossible truth. When she pulled away, her eyes were wet. See, she said softly. Now you can never hide from me. Not even your heartbeat. I looked around at the glowing walls, the pulsing screens, the endless data of our lives, and I realized she was right. I wasn't just being watched, I was being kept. But for the first time, I didn't resist. I leaned into her, resting my forehead against hers. If this is what it takes to keep you calm, I murmured, then maybe it's not a prison after all. She smiled faintly, that haunting, luminous smile I'd fallen for long ago. No, she said. It's home. That night, after she'd fallen asleep beside me, the glow of the monitors still flickering through the glass walls, I thought about what we'd become. Two people bound not by freedom, but by need. Her final journal entry was short. Ethan kissed me in the museum today. Tomorrow, the next experiment begins. And on my own page, I wrote, I used to think love was about trust. Now I know it's about surrender. In Isabella's museum, I am not just loved, I am preserved. The hum of the machines filled the silence, syncing with the steady rhythm on the central screen. My heart beating for her, inside her masterpiece. And as the lights dimmed, I realized that maybe this strange, obsessive eternity, was the only kind of forever we were ever meant to have.